everyone. Devorah Esther here, and thanks for joining us for another edition of Talking Torah with Devorah. And speaking of joining, do join in this mitzvah. Share the Torah on your podcast or your social media. You never know who can benefit from the content of today's podcast. And on today's episode, we're talking about something that many people struggle with, and that is Kavanah. And today's guest has made it his mission to help Klal Yisrael take back control in connecting with HaShem by teaching them how to transform mundane tasks and mindless mitzvot into moments of connection with HaShem. I'd like to welcome to my channel from the Holy Land of Eretz Israel, Rabbi Asher Baruch Wegbreit-A. Hi, Rab. How are you? And welcome to the show.
Thank God. Great. Thank you, Devorah. This is such a privilege. I'm so excited to
We're so excited to have you because it's like, we are all struggling with this. It's not just, the frum from birth. It's not just the Bali Tshuva. It's not just the convert. Even non-Jewish people, everyone is struggling with having intention. How did you get into this? Tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do. And this is very exciting that the prospect to connect with Hashem on a real meaningful level, I think is something that really excites people.
Okay. It's quite a story, if I may say so. When I first became, I'll just give a little background. I didn't grow up Torah observant and religious, and the truth of the matter is my route back was through a communist Chinese. He was a Chinese man in his mid-30s. I was in graduate school getting a PhD in psychology. And my roommate was getting a PhD in political philosophy. And he was, his story is pretty amazing too. He was 12 years old. He was in the coal mines in Mao Zedong, under the Cultural Revolution. He's 12 years old and he finds the following book translated into Chinese. It was Rousseau's Social Contract about democracy. So he feels I've found my mission, and he wanted to bring democracy to China. So what had happened? How did he get out of the coal mines? He coached the national women's basketball team. That got him out of the coal mines. He went into the School for Foreign Ministry. He was an assistant to Deng Xiaoping's daughter. So in his mid-30s, and he realized I can't change this from within. So he goes to the United States. And he wants to study democracy and figure out how to adapt it to China. So I walk in, I'd be honest with you, at the time, I was getting a degree in organizational psychology, and it's business meets psychology, and it's very profitable. So I have to be honest, I chose my career because it was interesting and profitable. I think
most people do, though, right? That's how we start out, right?
Exactly. But then, if you will, Hashem puts this person into his life. He's so idealistic. He realized he may never get married. He realized he's risking his life. And that number one inspired me. Then he inspired me about Jewish people. Again, I had a more a view of Jewish people as more secular I was, and okay. So he says, he says that he thinks the two wisest people on earth were the Chinese and the Jews. But he said the Chinese had it easier. They had a huge mainland, little conflict. He says the Jews, and I know this relates to so much to your journey and the people there. They had to run from this country to that country, and yet they're surviving, And he said they're so creative, and so we know, of course, that this was a combination of the Jews, how developed they were and creative, but of course it was Hashem's providence, which he didn't know about.
Right.
So anyhow, he got me searching and studying and this and that.
It's funny how Hashem uses the goy to do that. Leave it to Hashem. He will always leave a goy to remind you that you're Jewish.
Right. And thank God this was a pleasant way to be reminded.
Right, because most of the times he sends the goy and it's an anti-Semitic, encounter. So thank God this was a good way.
Exactly. My dad he should live and be well. He was in corporate life, and he was in a company that was just blasting forward, and he was doing very well. And somebody said that, I want you to know, he pulled him in his office. Your name came up for promotion, but they said no because you're Jewish. You
Uh,
know, so that's the kind of reminders a lot of people have had. Yeah, so I feel very lucky that mine was such a
a
nice and
pleasant, yeah.
spirited. Right. So here's something very interesting, and this will relate to, again, what you asked me, how I came into this focus on Kavanah. So it took me 7 years to finish my PhD. So I had time to study, and eventually, slowly but surely, Shem led me back to Torah, and that Torah was the source. So I'm still roommates with this fellow, and I go to Israel on a trip to learn Torah. And I had never learned it before. I was blown away, so excited. I said, and funny, the first rabbi I spoke to, when I heard him speak, I said, this Torah, are you saying this is from God? And he says, yeah, he says, yes, just very matter of factly.
No, I mean, and I laugh, but the truth is that this is really a question in a lot of the minds of a lot of Yehudim. Like they question this.
Right, right. So for myself, having gone through read a lot of philosophy and psychology and spirituality from like India, all these things, I had a lot to compare, and also my focus was psychology. But in fact, I read a book that was very life-changing. It's called The Denial of Death, and it was about an anthropologist wrote about how all these cultures deal with death. And he brought the greatest thinkers, Kierkegaard and Jung and all these different people. And he showed really that every great thinker, there's truth in what he says, and then they made big mistakes.
Right.
So that book affected me. And I'll be honest with you, I was a little disheartened. I said, I kind of had let's say a wish at least that there was truth, absolute truth. But when I came to Israel and started studying Torah, I couldn't find the false part. I just couldn't find it.
I think it's so funny because I tell people, even the mathematic precision, when you're talking about, the gematria and the hidden code within it, it is so precise. There's no way. Like, listen, I love Moshe Rabbeinu, but his mind could not have, conceived. How would he have known that you can look forever? Fish will only have these two signs if they're kosher. Until this day, no one has ever been able to debunk that. How would you know? Like there was just so many things about it. And it was just mind-blowing. It's like you said, there was no false in the Torah, right? And so it is, I think that a lot of Jews who are not from birth go on this little mission of life, right? They start investigating. This is like the story of Purim, right? Like we think that the other nations have it, and lo and behold, we find out we had it all along. Which I think is the beauty of why this Hag will not be canceled, because Hashem is coming to tell us the Torah is the source of all of the truth, right? And nations grab from it, but it's like you said, there's a little fallacy in each one of them. So I think that's what sometimes makes it so convincing that people go out to these other nations seeking truth. I think these people, mamish, really want to find truth. Right. And they want to connect to Hashem. And because of the fact that there's just enough truth in it, it hooks them.
Yeah, exactly.
Did you find this with yourself?
Pardon?
Did you find this with yourself?
Absolutely. That's what happened, for sure. That's why I search. And Jewish people often will search everywhere else,
Except
first.
For what's right in front of their face.
Right, exactly. So when I connected to it, and then also, I saw the way the husband and wife relate together. I saw the children. This is another thing I didn't see in other investigations, was a congruency between the thinking and the behavior, and just putting it alive. And I realized, many people in societies are trying to do things as best as they can, but right. It's really hard. It's really hard. And I said, this is working, was another indication to me that this is something divine. Okay. So what happened was, so when I started observing mitzvos and learning Torah for sure, but observing mitzvos, I was on fire. I was so excited. And now listen to this Chinese guy, when I came back, my first trip to Israel was I did about 6 weeks of learning. I come back and he sees me. Now, this person was very, very developed in terms of understanding people. He used to study people's eyes. He said to make it in successfully through politics and negotiate, you have to be able to read people very quickly and very accurately.
Yes.
You can hear it. So I come back and I'm just speaking to him, and he says to me, imagine a thick Chinese accent, but he says, we have a saying in Chinese: you can change river and mountain, but you cannot change person and personality. But you have changed. That's what he said to me. He couldn't understand it. Right. So what happened? What was that is, and this is very important to understand, when we make blessings, so Baruch HaShem came up, what we're ultimately doing is identifying Hashem as the source of the good we've just experienced, and feeling appreciation. That's, let's say, the essence of a blessing, to identify the proper source of where you got this great thing and to feel gratitude. So there's one blessing we make. We make it, let's say, by Torah, blessings on mitzvahs. So what are we thanking Hashem for? So the language is like this: Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam, asher kiddeshanu b'mitzvosav. What does that translate? That he sanctifies us with the commandments. So what is that? That means we're having appreciation that we are sanctified. Now, that is something very mystical. We won't, the Ramchal says in Derech Hashem, we won't fully realize what's happened to us till later on. But something is happening. We're evolving and changing and elevating.
And everything around you is also evolving and changing just by the words that you're coming out. And I think you're very right. Jews don't realize the power that is within them, especially when they're doing these mitzvot.
Exactly. I made a joke to try to get the point across. I have a good friend who's a doctor in South Africa. And I always use, if I'm going to talk about a doctor, his name is Dr. Setzer. So I made a thing that, I go to see him. I say, to be honest with you, I'm feeling fine physically, but I don't know, something's strange. I actually feel very good, but I don't know what's going on. So he said, let's take an X-ray, Rabbi. So he takes an X-ray and he goes, Rabbi, you're sanctified. You've become very sanctified. Just as I admit. So here's the thing. That's how I began. Okay. And that's how those who are privileged to rediscover Hashem, Torah, mitzvot, right? Especially amazing hearing about these people you're talking about. So when we discover it, we connect to it in a way that it just lifts us up and we're excited. However, Hashem, in his infinite wisdom, says, you have to do this again and again and again and again, right? You make blessings every single day.
And that's where people get lost. The again and the again and the again and the again.
Exactly. So that's what I myself was struggling with. I ended up going to yeshiva, studying Talmud for 30 years, but I was studying, but I also became a teacher. I was teaching Talmud, I was teaching Musar, I wrote books, Tefillah, and things like this. I was doing all this, and in terms of Torah, I always felt a charge and excitement and this and that. But, for example, the rabbis have set it up that we make 100 blessings a day.
Which is not always so easy. If you're not part of a minyan, it's not so easy to get to that 100.
Yes, and within whatever of the 100 you get, it's hard to stay connected. In fact, the Gemara in Brachos says,
and that's one day.
right, very good, very good. And so we're talking day after day, month after month, year after year. That's the challenge. The rabbis even say, because they knew this would be a problem, they say it's forbidden to throw a blessing out of your mouth, right? To say it quickly. But I was stuck. To be honest with you, I was stuck with that. And every Yom Kippur, I would have to apologize for that. And I'd have to apologize for my observance being mechanical in areas. So that's...
I want to actually get into this because this is a really good point. Now, again, like a lot of viewers on this channel come from an Anusim background. They either come from the Holocaust background. So this is something that is really, from 1492 to 1942, it continues to plague us all. And I wonder, because sometimes I feel like perhaps where we have gone wrong, right, in our that's HaShem, is that we did get complacent, right? That we started to get like, Baruch HaShem, blah, 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 blah. And I think that sometimes, again, that becomes a day after day after day. And before you know it, it seems as the line is blurred and you take for granted the fact of your power as a Yehudim, what that means, why we are here. And I think that this is where we end up mingling within the nations, thinking that somehow maybe they've got a take that's better than ours. And this is where we find ourselves in trouble. And I really feel like this is why I think this topic is so vital, because in many ways, to me, it almost seems like the root cause of a plague that keeps hitting Klal Yisrael. And it's that we just think that the nations have it. And I think it stems from this lack of awareness and connection, that there's something wrong with the connection, whether it's one thread, like the fiber optics that have many threads, whether it starts as one disconnection, it can erode. And before you know it, there's a disconnection, has v'shalom, or you're only connecting by a thread. What do you think about this?
That's so true. That's what I was going to say, right? When we do things by rote and mechanically, and we're not connected, so it's not just impacting us and our relationships, it's impacting our children to begin with, right? They see this and they say, you understand. And that's another reason I'm really giving everything I have to this, because, kids are leaving.
And I was just going to say, I was just having this conversation. I said, if we're not careful, in one generation, it can be gone. It can be gone.
Exactly. Unfortunately, we're seeing this type of thing. And my Rabbi Shimon Green, he told us when we were just got married with, or maybe about to have children and this and that. This was 25 years ago. And this is before the internet just took hold.
Exploded.
Yeah. So he said like this, and I think it's very important message for the people that, you've helped rediscover their roots from Spain and other places. He said to us, he says, look, you have a passion for what you're doing because you chose it, right? You saw the emptiness of the world and you chose it. And you heard my thing, the guy was blown away. So you chose it. And he says, that's probably going to carry with you for the rest of your life. You'll have a certain confidence and connection, but your kids are not growing up that way.
That's very true.
Right. And they see a big world out there. And so, oh boy, was it prophetic.
This, even in the Converso/Anusim community, this is a big thing because a lot of the parents have gotten the light bulb moment. We talk a lot about this on this channel, and we expect that the family members, that everyone else around them will have seen this light too. And lo and behold, it was just the light that you saw. And so many of them struggle with this. They're like, what do you mean? This is the truth. How do you not see it? And
right.
So sometimes it's just you that's seeing it.
Correct. Exactly. So there's a big impact there. And I think that's exactly this idea of why a lot of Jews left is they didn't feel a connection with and they didn't see it in their families. And then they left. And the thing is, so what let's understand, maybe, given that. So that's for sure true. So this has a major impact on our own our own experience of connection with Hashem, our children's experience, and our fellow Jews. What do they see and what do they want, right? So this issue is, I want to explain. We have to ask a question. This is my what's so beautiful about the Torah, Judaism, and what Hashem has set up for us is, you don't just, yes, sir, yeah, yes, and just listen to what it says. But we see the greatest people, Abraham, Moshe, right? They're arguing with Hashem.
I know.
Yeah, we shouldn't let our kids see here this.
I know. Let's let that. We gotta watch that.
But that you don't. You of course you respect the Hashem as knowing better than you, and you know that most of the time the rabbi or the rebbitzin knows better than you. But you're supposed to challenge and understand, right?
Yeah, which I think is one of the only religions that really does encourage this, to be learned, to challenge, to ask the question, because that's where you get the learning from and the understanding.
Exactly. So let's do that with Hashem. Politely, Hashem, please. You know what my intentions are. So here's the thing we have to ask. Why does Hashem, why is so much, and by the way, let's just make something clear. The mitzvot, some of them are set up by the rabbis, okay? But Hashem said, set this up. So what they're doing,
which is like, this is like one of the biggest pushbacks, right? That even some like Jews you would think would never come out of their mouth, but the rabbis made it up. It's got to be one of the most top 3 famous saying in all Klal Yisrael, right? And I always say, imagine you'd go to your boss, right? You go to your company and there is a manager, right? That the boss has clearly designated to either put policies in place, but to certainly enforce the ones that are there. Can you imagine if you said, no, I'm not going to do this? What do you think is going to happen? It's as if you were defying the boss himself. So, I mean, this, I feel, it's like what we're doing. We don't realize the boss has set up these parameters. And one of the parameters he set is that the Rabbanim can make these fences. Very clear in the Torah. And here we go and we say, no, they made it up. They made it up. I mean, I think people have really, they've gone astray on this one. This really turns people like topsy-turvy.
Right. But that's a beautiful metaphor. Beautiful. Exactly. You go up to us. The policy says this, but so you made that up.
I don't think it makes sense to me. I don't see the relevance in it.
Right. So the thing is this, and it's also good for people to see the parts of the Torah where it says, Hashem himself says, do what these sages tell you to do, and it's an actual command. Right. So what I'm going to do is this. I want to challenge if Hashem and the rabbis who are his agents for a second and say, why did you make things so repetitive, right? How come I have to recite the same prayer text again and again and again, and the same blessings, etc., right? So I think maybe many of us have that inside, right? We know we're supposed to, but it seems like Hashem put in place a kind of rote in this process. Okay, so I want to give 2 explanations because I think it's so important. Let's start with a more this one from Tzaddik Cohen. He said that you can evaluate a person's depth of character and sincerity by how they pray. Okay. Now, what I understood him to say is that if a person is capable of continually returning to the same words and infusing new meaning and relating their day to what's happened. So that is a way they have they reflect, they have inner depth. Whereas a person is relying on the external thing to make them feel inspired. So that's more superficial. Devorah says
and I think that's a good thing to bring out, because inspiration in many ways is very superficial. It's very fleeting, right? It has an expiration date on it.
Exactly. Beautiful. Exactly. And that's Reb Devorah says this too, that if you rely on the external situation, let's take Hanukkah. We had Hanukkah not too long ago. So when is everybody most like excited about Hanukkah? Of course, the first night, right? You go on second, third, you start. So that's put there. This was arranged on purpose, right? And so if you realize, number one, HaShem wants me to develop myself and become a person of substance and not have to rely on external things for excitement,
or
then
people,
you realize,
this is a big thing. People, external circumstances. It's funny. HaShem has been very clear, and he says you are to know, which is different from you are to feel.
Right.
Sometimes you need to know when there is no feeling, when there is no inspiration, when you are in a desert, that I'm still here. I'm still with you.
Right. A spiritual desert. Right. And so one reason this is a bit by design is because you're given a process where it demands you to come forth and not be reliant. And you said people, that's so important, as you know, with marriage, and there's so many people, it's so sad, that are not getting married because they're looking for the perfect set of external
which doesn't exist. Like, you've got to work.
Right, exactly. They want all the external qualities that will guarantee they'll be able to be happy with them, and that's a disaster. So this is one thing. This is by design to bring out and cultivate a depth of character. Okay, so that's number one, and I want to now make it even more central and deep. Okay, is to be alive physically, it's a gift. I don't have to, I don't have to do anything, right? To be alive spiritually is a choice. This is the ultimate choice. And the Torah has a commandment on this. It says, "B'charta b'chaim." I put before you life and death, choose life. It's not talking about, don't jump off a roof, right?
Right.
It's talking, the Torah's commandments, all of them, represent life, and we're supposed to be engaged in them too, right? HaShem.
When you can hit that, if you can hit that, it's like having the king in the field every day.
Beautiful. That's what we're trying to do as much as possible. So that's the whole thing. It's a choice to be alive. Rot is death, okay? Spiritually, let me qualify that. Rot is death spiritually, right? And to engage despite the fact that, this is very familiar and I've said it, but that is, you are choosing to be alive. It is the most central choice you can make. Now, the thing is, rot is very good physically. You need to, I've talked with a lot of fighters and people that, they have to
develop that muscle memory.
Exactly. But it's not the same spiritually. So the answer. So again, the question on HaShem is, why are you making this so difficult? It's so repetitious. I have to do it all again and again. It's how can you blame me? But HaShem's response, if you will, would be that I want you to become the best human being you can possibly be while you're alive. And this is exactly the choice. Are you going to come to me? Are you going to stay with me? Are you going to be connected? Now, and let's go back to the kids who see this, and the fellow congregants, and etc. All the people who are not religious. So is it because my rabbi said, he said, again, your kids are not growing up. They didn't discover that they're Jewish and escape the Spanish Inquisition. So they didn't have these amazing discoveries that are just profound, right? So they just grow up in little Beis Yaakov and this and that.
Right. Oh, what's the big
deal? Right. So it's going to take a lot of work, period. And something you said is so important is, we just think, isn't this obviously true? Isn't this obviously the best life? But they didn't have the experience that led them to that. So number one is empathy. For sure, we have to realize they don't have that experience. But another thing is this comes from my Rebbe's Rebbe, Rabbi Mordechai Goldstein Zetzal. He says, if you want people to have a spiritual or religious experience, have one in front of them.
Yeah.
You hear? Yeah. That's the way to do it. So if we inspire, just like if we're mechanical, we're not helping the situation with our kids and the people. But it's the other way. If we rev up and are inspired, that's going to have an impact, at least to some degree, on the children and people around us. So it's a very big thing.
It is. And like I said, it is something, I think you're absolutely right. And I think you make an excellent point, you and your Rav, that if you are the one, like for myself, right? Like, so sometimes I think that in my family, they think I'm 10 times more inspired because of the journey that I've been on. And that's where the challenge becomes for all those who were just watching. And sometimes they say, well, that was for you, but what about me? But the truth is that everyone has their particular mission that HaShem designated just for them. And like you said, be the best person. Hashem's not asking you to be the best Moshe Rabbeinu. He's asking you to be the best Devorah Esther. Devorah Esther, I gave you these talents. I gave you this. What are you going to do with it? What are you going to do with it? And it's your way of, connecting to Hashem in this unique way that no one else in the world can do. Not before, not since, not after. No one else. And I think that when we can, like I said, if you can get this connection, it's like bringing the king into the field every day. And I think that when you have that when you do go through this spiritual desert time, you can draw back on the fact that Hashem and I have been through so much together. I can't abandon him. He's my everything, right? Like I can't do it. And so I know that that's a challenge in this day and age, because like you said, a lot of the children, first of all, they are so bombarded with all the things that are going on. It is truly a topsy-turvy world. We are starting to see the reality of what the Rabbanim and the sages have always said. I don't want to be in that generation, and we can see why. And I got to tell you, I actually had to go into the emergency room recently, Lo Aleinu, and the nurses, now we're talking secular nurses, were telling us that there was such an explosion of youngsters with depression in the ER for suicidal tendencies like they have never seen before. And even when we left out, now, mind you, I went in for a very serious, and thank God Hashem is being a refuah. When I walked out to leave, you could see it. I can't even explain it. The people that were sitting there, it was as if they were zombified. They were like zombies, like they were gone. It almost seemed like there was a cloud in the atmosphere. And it just seemed like there was so much hopelessness and helplessness. And you can see its effects starting to go and go and go. I mean, this is really serious. And this is why I was so excited to have you on. This is something we need to take the baton from our ancestors who went through all. It's our time. It's our turn. We have to get this right for our children. There's no question about it. There are a lot of changes happening. What would you say? How can we start a practical way of bringing that Kavanah into our daily lives for, people who have never tried it, who never thought about it, or to the people who have always, I've always struggled, Rob, this is what would you give some practical advice on this?
Okay. Yes, that's the right question. Okay. So now I want to explain the word Kavanah first, and then, my goal would be to give a kind of a basic approach, and then you start the journey with that. So The most people, when they think of the word kavanah, they think of prayer. Like I had a lot of, and the word kavanah there means focus, okay, and concentration. So if you said I had good kavanah, I was focused. If I had bad kavanah, I was not focused, okay. In that realm, also kavanah could mean you felt like some depth there. You know, it was deep. You know, I had a deep experience. That's one type of kavanah. The type of kavanah that opened up the whole this explosion of opportunity for me, though, was another one, which is called kavanah lemitzvot. Okay, there the word kavanah does not mean focus or concentration. It means conscious intention. To have conscious intention for what you're doing. Okay. So, for example, right now, all those who are listening are doing a mitzvah. What's that mitzvah? Learning Torah. I'm doing a mitzvah. I'm teaching Torah. So, as opposed to us just, you guys listen and I talk, but what if you stop and say, what am I doing? I'm learning Torah. Okay, so then you say to yourself, why am I learning Torah? Because Hashem wants me to. It's a mitzvah. Hashem, I'm doing this because Hashem, let's say, commanded me. Okay, so when you stop, suddenly, I call it the sacred pause. If you pause before you act and say, why am I doing this? And then you consciously intend to do it. This is so important. I spoke around the States recently, and I asked everybody this question. I said, when here, let me try you, Devorah. When were you commanded to do the mitzvot?
Now, either daily or from when you were born, from the time you were born, which would have been at bar mitzvah age.
Okay, so good. That's one answer I get is bat mitzvah. Any other possibilities of when there was the commandment to do the mitzvahs?
I feel like this is a deeper question. What is that? I don't know if
it is.
I'm
saying no one gets the right answer here. I just want to bring it out. So
I think for me, I think like it's you really from the moment that you get up, there has to be from the moment you get up, it should be the first thing on your mind to the moment you go to sleep, right? Like Hashem should be with you in my head, right? And this is just my chidush. Like I think you have to set for the day the fact that Hashem, I'm here, you're here, let's do this. Let's get it together.
Okay, so listeners, Devorah is one of the only people who correctly answered this question. Keep listening, I encourage you. So most people will, very good. Most people will say at bat mitzvah, bar mitzvah, or they'll say when we got the Torah at Sinai. Okay, another answer people will say is when you learn about the mitzvah, okay, then you're obligated. These are all partially correct. But guess when? Guess what? Today.
Right.
Now this says this. Yes, it said that in the second paragraph in the Kriya Shema, and it actually says this a few places. It says the mitzvahs I commanded you today.
Okay, right.
And that's why this is so important. See, this is why it's a pleasure to work with people who have, are really seeking to connect with Hashem. So you realize this, mitzvahs can turn into actions that you do and you forget it's a relationship. The one
I gotta say is can you imagine in your marriage, I love you. I love you. I love you. And you say it by rote, but there's like no real there's no kavanah behind it.
Right.
It's just what I say.
Right. Beautiful. Beautiful example. Now, let's stress something everyone has to hear. Super important. Let's say you do always say I love you to your husband. Okay. Now, and let's say it is mechanical. That's not ideal. But if that's what you do and then you stop doing it, that's worse, right? So the fact that we do the mitzvahs, right, shows a level of commitment and connection. We should, if you do it by rote or it's still precious. The way I give a metaphor is if you had a check, right, and you have a 1 there, and then you add a zero. Okay, zero, zero, the more zeros. Whoa, it's
The more
amazing.
valuable.
Right. But if you didn't have the one first, you could add all the zeros you want, right?
And it
So,
amounts to nothing.
right, exactly.
So you got to show up.
Right. Showing up and doing the mitzvah is the one. We're talking about putting zeros and enhancing, making millions more in our connection. So let's go back. So I just want to point out that was great. You gave that example. I love you. I love it. Say it, even if it's rote. Okay. But now let's go to the right. So what happens when you do it, you start saying, I have to daven now. I have to, get the kids ready for school. I have to, this, that. I have to. And you focus on the action and forget it's a relationship, right? So that's why the step number one is say, what am I doing right now? And by the way, this idea comes from the Ramchal in Messias Yesharim, chapter 17. He says, if you want to have a purity of connection, he says, you ask yourself two things, okay? And the first thing is, ask, what mitzvah am I doing? And this can become really fun. Like, I've done this, like, when you have mitzvahs, but let's say when you have a glass of water, right? What am I doing now, right? Well, what's incredible about the Torah is it's really, HaShem gives you a chance to connect. Mitzvah also means bonding, but there's a mitzvah for you name it, everything, even mundane in quotes.
There's a mitzvah for that.
Yeah. So for example, I'm about to drink a glass of water and I stop, sacred pause. What am I about to do? Right. So if you think, what does drinking do? It's healthy. If you drink water, it's healthy, right? It makes you more awake, etc. Or let's say you squeeze a lemon in it and has a little flavor. It tastes good. So guess what? There are mitzvahs there. There's a mitzvah to take care of your health. HaShem says, I want you to take very good care of your health because you can't connect spiritually, says the Rambam, unless you're in a good state of physical health. You won't be able to.
And I know all about that. That is very true.
Yeah. So there you go. So when I realize that every moment I'm doing something that could be a mitzvah, and a mitzvah, the Ramchal says for Jewish people, the only authentic connection comes from mitzvahs. But the good thing is everything almost can be a mitzvah, going to sleep. And I've even talked with people. When you say good morning or you smile at someone, right? You could say, you say good morning to your friend or your spouse or your kid, right? You say good morning, right? And you give them a smile. So you can do the sacred pause there and say, what am I doing here, right? So I'm showing love. I have to love your neighbor like yourself, which is also by when you greet someone, you're giving them honor. You're showing that you are affected by their presence. That's a mitzvah of loving your neighbor like yourself. You would like to be acknowledged.
Yeah, you want to acknowledge the presence of somebody, and it feels good to be acknowledged that you mattered. It helps people to realize that they mattered, that they're showing up.
Exactly. So that's a mitzvah. And so you stop and say that you just put that in. So you start to become, so answer number one to your question, what can people do to start to experience this is stop periodically and say, what am I doing? What is there a mitzvah opportunity here? And then have conscious intention. You're doing it because HaShem said today, love your neighbor like yourself. Right? Take good care of your health, learn Torah, etc., etc. So, sorry. So anyhow, that's the first thing, and you may not know the answer. Okay. Now that's partially why I opened this up. Is I want to. There's two things I'm trying to do: is enable people to experience more connection, but sometimes part of the process is discovering what's available. How many mitzvahs there are that you are doing, you just don't realize you are doing. So it's you will also have to attain an awareness of the opportunity. Okay, so that's the first step.
So I want to say, like, I want to start wrapping up because this is such a deep topic, and I know that you've written about this, and I want to let our viewers know. Not only does the Rabbi have a website, but there are books that which first of all, I'm very intrigued by the Aleinu. This is something Hashem has been bringing to my attention the last year, the Aleinu, and again, a rote prayer that we say every day, right, 3 times a day, but there's so much power in that Aleinu. I don't think people like really realize like what it does. And I'd love to invite you back to start talking about that because, I think here's what I will leave off with before we wrap up. I get this question a lot from people who write into me either through the email or through YouTube. And they're always saying like, what's wrong with me just doing my personal prayer, which there's nothing wrong with that. But I want to bring to people's attention, especially those who are Jewish, who read the Hebrew, that there are, Hashem's names a lot of time is embedded in those words, right? And you need to read them, hopefully through the Siddur, not by rote, right? To also tap into the power that is within those names. And I want to say, there's a reason why these things were compiled. There's a lot of wisdom in why these prayers were chosen. And a lot of them have jobs to do. These prayers are set up and they have jobs to do. And the thing is, it's like taking a vitamin. You take it every day, right? And one can say, well, I took it once. Why do I got to take it again? Because the next day brings its own challenges that needs its own protections. So this is why we do it rote every day, every day, every day. So it is so vital. And I think for people, especially those who have probably converted in, especially from Christianity, where there is a lot of emotional aspects to their kind of worship, you really have to retrain yourself. And again, and this really goes for everyone, there is a reason. It's like, we don't always understand, especially when we're young, why the doctor has given us the medicine, whatever it is. But it's because it is for our good. There is something that's beneficial. And I have to say too, we can't take it for granted. The personal relationship, there is something that's really great. Talk to Hashem. He wants you to speak to him. He wants you to put all of your troubles and everything with him and have Kavanah in that. But don't forget that the Rabbanim have put in place. A lot of these prayers, they have protection for your life, for your health, for your parnasa, for everything. We need to tap into this. And this is like the quickest way to get into that shefa, that source of brachot that comes with all of that. So I want you to talk very quickly about some, like your website, some of your books. And again, Bezrat Hashem, I hope to have you back on this Aleinu subject. Hashem has really, it's funny, like, again, you do things rote and then one day Hashem just opens up the light bulb on it. And Aleinu has been one of those things. And so I start to say it now with it's almost like, when we were Nashma Benishma, we will do it, you will hear, and then we will do it. So it's like I'm in that place with Aleinu. I'm doing it,
Beautiful.
And I'll understand
now
it.
You want to hear it.
Yeah, now I want to hear it. So, talk to us a little bit about some of the books that you've given. This has been such a fascinating conversation. I got to tell you, this has been one of the most enjoyable conversations I've had because this affects everyone, no matter where you're holding in your journey and your, where you are. Everyone struggles with this, especially in this world that is so busy. We've got so many things going on. It's so easy to lose that connection. But this is something that's really been plaguing us. Like, I don't know that we've really fully gotten a handle on having Kavanah and connecting with Hashem. Because back in the day, it was like maybe the Rabbanim who got it, right? And some Rebbitzins that got it. But on a wide scale, I think that Klal Yisrael as a whole has always struggled with this. So let's wrap up. Let's talk a little bit about that, your books, and Bezrat Hashem to have you back on.
I'd be thrilled. Okay. Yeah, this has been fantastic for me too. So just right. I introduced the first of 3 basic steps to recover the Kavanah, and I'm just going to tell you that the step 2 is how to draw Hashem, the awareness that you're in Hashem's presence. That's a step two. And a third, what you mentioned about the Christians, and I've met many Christians that became Jewish, they have such emotions and feelings.
Right.
We too are supposed to, and I have a path for that through the sages. Okay, so I'm sure Devorah will post my website, but it's kavanah.com.
I'm going to have a link to that on the bottom, and so you can check that out, because the Rabbi, I believe, has 4 books out for publication now. So, I mean, again, this is
So maybe I'll just mention about the books, because that's a little separate. The website is teaching people what we've been talking about, how to connect and the different dimensions. And I just introduced really the first part. So that's there. Regarding the books, right? So Ashrei and Aleinu are just, most people will just make a joke about how fast it's done. And they're the most rote things.
It is the most rote, but I've got to tell you, Aleinu has been coming in the forefront as a very powerful prayer.
Oh, they're so deep. In my humble opinion, that this is one thing I always say, and I'll finish. Mitzvahs don't occur in a vacuum. Okay, there's a Yetzer Hara, an evil inclination that Hashem put in us to give us free choice. So it won't be a surprise to know that the things you do most mechanically have the most depth in them and beauty. Ashrei and Aleinu, for sure. And next time we speak about Aleinu, it is for sure placed at the end of Damming to be a vitamin for the rest of the day. So we can speak about that.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm so excited to have had you on. This has been really enlightening. I hope for my viewers as well. I mean, again, I think, guys, if we can get this together, especially for those who are coming, like we said, that you've gotten the light bulb moment, but no one else around you has. And the truth is, you can only work on yourself. But I promise you that if you are genuinely working and connecting with Hashem, that will permeate out. People will want to know what you're doing. And you won't even have to say anything. It'll be just such a natural thing. And I think that's what's the beauty of it, that while you're having this wonderful experience, people are enjoying the light and the warmth that comes with Hashem's presence. So I am so glad that we had you on. I'm so glad that Hashem set this up.
Yes.
Rabbi, please, I hope that you will come back on again. But that's all for today. And I hope we'll all be together again soon. Bezrat Hashem.
Thank you so much. It was wonderful.
If you've enjoyed this video or know someone who would, please share it. Sikul mitzvot.